Hi, welcome to the Also Called podcast, where we're asking hard questions about our place in this hectic world.
Join us as we dig into the truth about who God is, possibly discovering that we are also called. Welcome back to the Also Podcast Season 2. I'm Mia Burke.
And I'm Andrea Buffkin.
And we're just two friends with lots of questions looking to Jesus and the Word to figure out this thing called life and what it means to live in faith. Join us this episode as we talk about pop psychology versus God. Is dealing with trauma and healing an or an or with these two seemingly different sources? Get ready as we jump into the heart of the show, and let's get started. Today's guest is Melody Worsham. Welcome.
Hi, this is wonderful.
Well, we're so glad to have you back. So, Melody, can you reintroduce yourself to our audience and let us know what you've been up to since last season?
Oh, goodness. I work in the mental health field as an advocate, but also as a peer support specialist, which means I'm someone who actually has been trained to use my own lived experience to help people seek recovery, find recovery, and that is with mental health conditions, trauma, and substance use. That's what I've been doing lately. I've been doing an awful lot of advocacy. Right now, we've got a lot of people hurting for a lot of reasons.
Well, thank you for doing that. That's so needed. Like you said, it's just culture-wide, almost, I would say, an epidemic. Welcome, Melody, to the podcast. And we've already shared, both Andrea and I, in previous episodes that we feel called to. So as Mia, I feel led and called to help people fall in love with the story of Scripture.
And I feel like I'm called to be transparent. So what do you feel called to in this season or your life's purpose?
I feel like I am being called to be a voice for the voiceless, to shout to the mountaintops. I really believe that that's where I am in this season right now, is I cannot be silent.
A little bit of background on what brought this topic up for us. I have had experience with both. Obviously, I've been raised as a Christian, but in my early 20s, I had a complete breakdown and was hospitalized. I definitely benefited from clinical counseling, and I had a diagnosis, which helped me to better understand what was going on with me and how I could deal with that from a clinical standpoint. And then raising children, there were certain aspects with our lives where I felt like I needed some professional help to work through some of those things. But then I also see in younger generations, it's like a generation, even like Gen X and before us, it feels like maybe emotions were weakness or have a stiff upper lip, keep plowing through. But then it's like the pendulum has swung so far in the other direction. We have all these buzzwords. We have all these, everybody has a diagnosis, and it seems like it's used as an excuse rather than context to help you understand how to navigate to move forward. And in some cases, you're just frozen by that diagnosis or being able to recognize this makes me feel a certain way in my body. And so I'm just going to avoid all kinds of discomfort altogether, right? So we were just having conversations about what we see and what we've experienced. And so to you, what is pop psychology and why are we even talking about it?
Well, the word pop is just short for popular. There's trends. When people learn something, it becomes popular for a while because it's a new thought. And of course, if there's not a lot of explanation, if people are not diving deeper into it, they'll start getting their own idea about what that means. I've seen the pendulum swing too, but anytime there's a change in society, it requires a very wide swing. We have to go from one spectrum all the way to the other extreme in order to find out, well, what exactly is the middle? And do we actually need to be in the middle? That's a question we need to ask ourselves. Is middle of the road really always, everybody goes, well, let's just be medium here. You know what? Sometimes medium is not where you got to be. God called that lukewarm, and he said it actually makes him nauseous. So where would we do in pop psychology? I think exploration and curiosity is going to be key for using pop psychology in the way it should. You bring up something really, really important here, Andrea, that back in the day, all emotions were considered negative. I shouldn't feel extreme sadness or extreme anger, or I shouldn't feel, of course, that's when the pill generation came out. oh, this woman lost her husband and she's grieving too much. And so let's give her a pill so that she can be numb for a while. And then we wonder why substance use disorder is an epidemic right now. And it's because, oh, I have an emotion. I must stuff it.
And I even have the extreme opposite. I remember when I was in another country working with a team of people, I was very exuberant and enthusiastic about something at a lunch and I got shamed for it. So it's just interesting, even positive can still make people feel uncomfortable. So I think you are absolutely right.
Yes, yes. So a lot of the pop psychology that I'm seeing today, the pendulum is swinging in the entire way, but it's very positive from what I'm seeing. I think people are starting to get a little bit better grip on emotions. God created us that way. And for anyone who would ever claim that God himself does not have emotions, they have not read the Bible. They have not read a single word of the scripture because he is angry, he is upset, he grieves, he loves passionately, he is jubilant. Can't we be those things? And those are big emotions. So we don't call them negative or positive emotions. That's part of pop psychology trend right now. We don't call them negative or positive emotions. We just call them big emotions and little emotions. And I actually think that's very fair because they're all valid.
Can you give us a specific example of something you would consider popular in the ethos right now?
One of the trends that I'm seeing with the really young people, our teenagers, our 20s, young adults, that I am thrilled about is that they are so open to talk about their feelings. No matter how they feel about them, they just get them out and they actually talk to each other. So they're actually being honest. My generation was taught, hey, Melody, how are you? I'm fine. Isn't that the answer you have to give? Is that socially acceptable? Of course it is. But is it true? It's not. Half the time I'm lying. The other half I'm exaggerating. So nowadays, when a young person, hey, how you doing? Yeah, well, I'm having a rough time trying to figure out how to get through my physics class, or my parents are yelling constantly. I don't want to talk to nobody right now. I want to be alone, or I need people around me. They are wide open with that. And I consider that to be a very positive trend. The other part of that is the trauma that Andrea brought up earlier. We've got to get that out. To say that trauma did not impact us and how we navigate life, we think and feel our way through life, and trauma is going to trigger us to have emotions about smells, sights, things that are completely unrelated or that we think are unrelated. And so being able to be honest about that and try to verbalize it and come up with other ways, but not have to have those diagnostic words and patient feels exuberation, blah, blah, blah. No, she's pissed off. How about that? Or she's so giddy she can't even talk right now. Let's get it out in a natural way. And then all of a sudden emotions seem to be natural. So that's a trend that I see that I'm feeling very good about.
I guess one of the concerns that I've seen is, yes, they're willing to discuss their feelings and what they're going through, but it's also kind of, this is what I'm feeling, so you have to work around that and avoiding discomfort altogether. So let's say this particular thing is triggering for me. And just the word triggered, I think, is like super overused. It would be, and again, this is my personal, I'm not a professional in any way. We all know that. But my opinion is, let's use something more specific. So it's not just triggering to you, but what do you feel in your body? When are other times that you feel that in your body? And how can you, let's breathe through that or whatever, use some of those techniques to get through that feeling. But it's almost like the two drawbacks that I see is, first of all, we learn just enough to be able to recognize the problem, but then it kind of stops there. So the first issue is they're not taking the necessary steps to do anything about it. And the other problem I see is, like I mentioned before, the expectation is for everyone else to work around your feelings. Your feelings become everybody else's issue, not just yours. So those are just the two problems that I've seen with people that I've been around. But again, I'm just a layperson. I'm not in the professional field.
And those are your personal experiences, and every single one of those are valid. A lot of people go through that same kind of thing, that struggle between, do I lay here in my big feelings, I'm uncomfortable, or do I find some way to work myself out of them? And should I work myself out of them? And there's so many biblical examples of times when people chose to stay in them and chose to get out of them. And what we're learning, and I think is very important with the pop psychology right now, is that there's multiple pathways, and what might work for you is not going to work for me necessarily. And so some people need to wallow in their feelings, and we need to allow that to happen. Someone who is still a pop character, and he's been a pop character for more than 50 years, is Winnie the Pooh. If you look at Eeyore obviously lives with depression. There is just no doubt about it. He's got generalized depression, if you want to give him a diagnosis. But you know what? Not a single one of his friends have ever excluded him because of it. Even though he's dragging, he's slow moving, he's saying things that are not what things that Tigger would say. They just can't imagine not including him as part of their group and part of their adventure for the day. And so it's that accommodating. They don't look at it as, oh, no, we got to accommodate Mr. Depression here. They're not looking at that. They're going, no, this is just who he is. And we're going to accept him as he is. And we're going to meet him right where he is. If we want to be with him, we have to understand the disability that is caused by his depression, that he might not be able to work it out. He can't snap out of it. No person with a mental health condition can just snap out of it. I promise you. I've tried it. Every time I snap my fingers, I am still having trauma. I'm still hallucinating. I'm still having thoughts in my head and voices. And so, no, I can't just snap out of it for the sake of the people around me. And just like someone when in a wheelchair, or someone who is a slow speaker, or an elderly person, if we want them part of our group, we have to figure out some way to include them and accommodate them to be just an equally important part of our community.
I was just going to ask, can you circle back around to what you were saying, is that there are biblical examples of these things in the Bible, of people who have stayed in those things and people who have been able to move forward in these things. Can you give us some examples of both?
So two examples really, really come to mind that are opposites, okay, in the way that actually God responded to the person. There is Elijah, after single-handedly, and I use his example all the time because I love him so much, he's my hero, single-handedly slay the priests of Baal and mocks them and dances around, and he just has himself an adrenaline moment with these people. And then he goes and hides in a cave and says, nobody loves me and God's forgotten me. And, and he's crying. And God's response is letting him sleep. Let him wallow in his pain. Just allow him to sleep. But every once in a while, he knew that he had particular needs that had to be met. And so what did he do? He sent an angel going, wake up, Elijah, and eat something. You just got to just get up and eat something. Now, not one time did the angel say, Elijah, snap out of it, buddy. I can't deal with all this depression that you're dealing with. You're debilitating me. You're putting me down. God's called you to do something. Shame on you. He never once did that. The angel continued to just say, get up and eat. Get up and eat. And then when he saw he was feeling better, he goes, now you're ready for God's next calling in your life. So then we can look at, and I say two, but actually there's three. Let's go to Peter. Peter comes up and everything, and Mr. Passionate, he is, if you read anything about Peter, he's just nothing but a bundle of adrenaline. And he gets angry very quickly. He's hyperbolic. He strikes the ear off of a Roman soldier, just slices it off. And what's Jesus' response? Puts the ear back on and tells him, chill out, Peter. You got to chill out. Okay? That's two different approaches that God has taken for the same strong emotions. You see what I mean? And then that third one that comes to my mind is Paul. Paul slayed that man, and God put him in his place for it. There was an actual chastisement for his act of anger. And so there are different pathways that each of us have to take. And it's that seeking God in those moments of turmoil that we're feeling, that we're going to find out what is the right pathway we need to take. because there is no one size fits all, is there? What might work for Andrea or Mia is not going to work for Melody. What works for Melody just might not work for Andrea and Mia here, you know? So, in the same with Paul, Elijah, and Peter, different approaches to the things that they needed in order to get them back on track and back doing what they're supposed to do and what they were called to do. So those are some good examples of how, you know, emotional turmoil were respected by God, validated by God even, but different approaches on how to get out of them.
Those are great examples for Lent. Earlier this year, we read through the book of Psalms, which I have always loved the book of Psalms because you get to see all of those emotions. Like, even when there is the security of God, I trust you, and I know you're a God, and I know you are capable, and I know you're faithful, but this stinks right now, and I don't know how I'm going to get through it. So again and again. And the other thing, it's not just David. There's so many psalmists. So this goes over hundreds of years of different authors being able to express these things. And I've always loved reading through the Psalms because it makes me feel like I'm not crazy. That it's okay to have faith and struggle. It's okay to have faith and a therapist.
Oh, big time, big time. One of the things that um, the Holy Spirit enlightened me, because I've read this scripture so many times, but Romans 7:22. He said, I saw another law at work in me, waging war against the law of my mind. I had never seen that. And I've read Romans 7 so many times because Romans 7 is kind of like the human psyche wrapped up in a bundle. It's just tied with a bow in one chapter of the Bible. That waging war and the torment between what am I thinking, what's my mindset, what is my spirit saying on the inside about what's happening to me, and the conflict and the challenges of keeping both in balance. But I had never seen that where it said waging war against the law of my mind. And I'm like, what's the law of my mind? It's my mindset, what I've grown up with, my environmental teaching that emotions are bad, that it's not nice to yell, that we should remain stoic. And that shows how we're strong when we can get through a horrible experience with a stiff upper lip. And I say bull hockey to all of that. I really do. I am fighting with my mind, but I'm fighting the mindset that goes against the laws of God. And not a single law of God says that it's wrong for Melody to exhibit the impact of trauma. It's not against God's law for me to feel depression or loneliness or despair or grief. As a matter of fact, these are all things that God himself experiences, and so they cannot be against his law. And so that waging war against the law of my mind is that, why am I fighting this? My truth is going to be in the word of God. Colossians 3:2, I set my mind on the things above. So that's the healing part. But what part of the above do I need to be looking at? Because I've got a whole Bible full of things like that I can be looking at. But what do I need to look at? That's where I need the Holy Spirit to guide me. What kind of high-minded things do I need to be looking at right now to get me through this particular thing that I'm dealing with right now?
I think it just brings up the whole issue of being triune beings. We have a spirit with a mind and an emotions and thoughts and feelings, and then we have a body. And why it's so frustrating to me, why has that not been explored more or accepted more in Western culture? Just think of the amount of disease and mental illness we have, that two parts of ourselves have not even been addressed as real. So anyway, that's just my own frustration.
So, some of the newest trends when it comes to diagnoses is that diagnoses themselves are actually a construct for the insurance companies. They can't bill if they don't have a diagnosis. It's just that simple. But it's like WebMD. If I plug in a set of symptoms, they are going to pop out a diagnosis for me, and it could be completely inaccurate and completely useless. Okay. I don't like the diagnostic manual. I oppose it. I do think it's just a matter of how to bill. I have to say she has depression in order for me to justify that I prescribed such and such to her, or told her that she needs to see a therapist, or any other thing that a doctor is going to tell me. And I kind of think that's neat that part of the pop culture that's trending even right now since the 2020s has been, let's get away from labeling people. Isaiah 53 says, he took up our pain and bore our suffering. He expects the pain and he expects the suffering. He didn't put a label on it. He never put a label on it when Peter did what he did. He never put a label on it when Elijah did it. Samson, he never said anything about what Samson's diagnosis was, but we know something mental health wise was going on with this man just by the way he behaved. And David, he was killing people and stealing their wives. I'm sorry, but that is something that you can find in the DSM-5. Okay, you can find that, but does that actually does it define David? It doesn't at all. And it has no use whatsoever for David to recover from his issues, his battle with his mind, the war with his mind, that he thought that it was okay to do those kinds of things.
Yeah,
So
I love what you said, Melody. It goes back to our mindset and it being different to what God's law is. And it just reminded me a couple of podcast episodes that I've heard recently. And, so it talks about more people than ever go to a therapist or to a psychiatrist for this diagnosis, for this treatment or whatever. But where also more people are diagnosed, to your point, with depression, and this is the unhappiest we've ever been, and all that kind of stuff. One of these podcast episodes, it's like, if the first thing you think about when you wake up is, oh, woe is me, another day, instead of waking up and, God, how can I serve you today? Like, to your point, thinking about things above. It's all self-focused rather than being God-focused. So I think all works together with our mindset and the things that we're focused on and how we feel about ourselves.
I think so too, Andrea. And going back to Romans 7, you can actually collate that with Freud's id, ego, and superego. When you look at that, we do have those warring parts of our minds, ourselves, our flesh, our spirit, and our mind are constantly at battle. And so if we were to take it in a spiritual approach, we get away from diagnosing someone with some kind of a syndrome where this is all maternal, it's about their mother, or they have daddy issues. We can get away from those kind of things that pigeonhole people and just say, no, this is just the battle that this particular person is having at this particular time in their life. And it's all transformable. Every bit of it is. It's all changeable. Even if we were born with some kind of a mental health thing that's genetic or is part of our DNA, it's changeable, it's manageable, and it can be given to God, and that curse can be turned into a blessing.
Well, I like what we were talking about in the show notes is that psychology is confirmation of God's systems and his presence and healing. But are we leaning too heavily on the diagnoses, psychology, this piece of it, and not putting God, like you said, bringing him into that and not letting the thing define us for life?
Indeed. Even if you decided you were going to choose a label out of the DSM, okay, you decide to do that. Look at each symptom and say, Lord, what can you do about this for me? I have bursts of anger. Lord, how can I use that to your glory? Because he used it for Peter, he used it for Paul, he used it for Elijah. Why can't he use it for me? And how can I give you glory in those bursts of anger? Lord, I'm going to stay in bed all day and I'm going to feel sorry for myself. You did it for Jeremiah. You did it for some other people. How can you use that for me? What can I do with that, Lord? If we used it in those sins, it takes that label away and it helps us to actually address what's really going on with us instead of us just walking around as a billboard saying, look, I am depression, I am schizophrenia, or I am BPD, or whatever else it is that you might have.
So I recently started listening to a book. It's Psychology, Theology, and Spirituality in Christian Counseling by Mark R. McMinn. And it's for it. I don't expect anyone else to listen to this, but I just started it. It's for counselors. So it's going to be more of a clinical kind of thing. But so far, I'm really loving it. And just like we're talking about the triune parts of ourselves and context of diagnosis and giving it to God, I love the way they're talking about this, how a psychologist without a theology background would treat something, or someone who's trained in theology with no psychology really would treat it differently. But I love that third part, the spirituality. And he goes into our spiritual formation is so important. So it's different than just having the theology of it. It's those practices, which is something that we talk about so much on this podcast, because truly it all comes back to discipleship and community. So our spiritual formation is so important to be able to have those things, like you said, Melody, to go to God and say, hey, this is a symptom I'm having. This is what they tell me is going to be part of my life, but you're bigger than that. So how can I use that for you? If this is what you've gifted me with, Lord, how can I use that to serve you? Because I know you put me here for a purpose, for with a calling, and you've gifted me uniquely to do that. So I love that this book is bringing those three parts together, because they work. They have to all be together to work properly.
I agree. I totally agree. I'll go back to one of the things that we were talking about with the pop psychology. The one part that kind of concerns me, there's a bigger focus on spirituality. That's the plus. But what I'm hearing more and more people say is things like, the universe spoke to me. Give it to the universe. That's a way of avoiding saying who the God of the universe is. I don't worship the creation. I worship the creator. So it's like you're taking a step, but how can we use that? Well, okay, well, if you're reaching out to the universe, it's only another baby step towards reaching out to the creator of the universe, right? But I did find Cedarville University, they did a thing called the psychology through the biblical worldview. And one of the things that they were talking about was this universe spoke to me, and how do we actually utilize that to assist people into actually being in touch with the actual person who can actually transform you and heal you. You know, they have the power to heal you. And I think it's really, really good. But he also addressed, the Freudian part of that, and the superficialness of some of the things that we do. I don't want to say this in any sense of judgment, just an observation that grieves my heart. But I do spend a lot of time with people who are doing the meditation thing these days, and so on. And they talk about, oh, yes, I do it, and I feel so one with the universe. And I'm like, actually, you're feeling one with yourself. And as soon as you get done with it, I see your life is extremely dysfunctional. Bad marriages, they're cheating on each other, they seem unhappy, they're using substances, all this stuff. And it's like, okay, so for the moment that I'm zoning out, getting rid of all my emotions, I feel good. And that's probably the only time that they do. But as soon as they get up, they're going back to their very unhappy lives. And so they're having a hard time applying their universe to their lives. And that's because I can't call on Jupiter, some other solar system or galaxy. I can't call it to Earth to help Melody. But the creator, oh yeah, he's omnipresent. He's right there. And if he can create all those things, he can certainly create in me a new spirit, a new mind, rejuvenation, and all that. And so if I'm meditating on him, that means that when I get up, I might be going back to my dysfunctional life, but I seem to have answers and clarity and some hope. Keeping hope alive is important.
Well, and he's the calmer of the storm, the calmer of chaos, and he brings order to that. So I'm with you. It's like I would much rather focus on him, to meditate on him and invite him into the chaos, invite the one who can actually do something to order the dysfunction, the chaos, the trauma in my life.
Absolutely. These are moments that we can use to bring people closer to the Lord. It's definitely a trend in pop psychology. They do consider spirituality to be a dimension of wellness. Without it, you are not going to be well. I don't mind using the word spirituality. If people are talking about spirituality, it means they are acknowledging they have a spirit. And if you acknowledge you have a spirit, you're going to be reaching out for it. It allows you to be open to what God has for you. And so I don't worry about that they might be getting it from Buddha today or the universe or any other kind of source and all that. The fact that they're hungry for it means that they're open for what God has for them. And it's a matter of those of us that are solid in our faith to help guide that person at the right time at their pace. It's always at their pace. It has to be. Otherwise, we could actually re-traumatize and make them angry at God. And if you think about it, a lot of people who deal with trauma, they're going to blame God for what happened. Oh, it's God's fault that my child died. Or it's God's fault was it a car accident. It's God's fault that I'm depressed or that my parents were divorced. They're going to blame. Well, hey, at least you acknowledge that God exists. And guess what? He can handle all that. He really can. He's actually good at that. He'll validate those emotions.
That's so good because I remember in the other disciples, I was covering Mary of Bethany, and it was very intimidating to cover a character or a real person who lived who was angry at God, but he could handle that. Jesus literally called her to him and said, "Okay, let's deal with this." And he's not afraid of it. He's bigger than that. And that's part of learning that he's good.
Yes, I do live with the PTSD that I have is complex PTSD, they call it. And I say I live with the impact of trauma in my life. It has been him that has shown me how to use those curses as a blessing. My paranoia works extremely well for me because there are things in this world that I should not trust, that I should be very suspicious of. So it's a gift that he has given me through my lived experiences that I can either use to crawl in a hole and have a pocket knife in my hand in the middle of night and wonder who's going to break in and hurt me, or I can use it as these are people who can do harm. And will I be the fierce protector? Will I be the person who stands up against those people? So I have choices I can make about that, and it's actually empowered me to embrace even the voices in my head. I'll argue with them. That's that war. I'm waging war in my mind. I can bring God in there and say, "Oh yeah, yeah, you think I'm some ugly idiot and I'm a hateful person and nobody loves me? And okay, fine. Well, guess who does love me? The God of the universe. That's who. So, don't care, brain, what you have to say about me. So I can have that argument and I can come out of it victorious and know that I have worth, even if it's just one thing. And I'm okay with that. I'm okay if God only uses me for one thing. There's plenty of examples of that in the Bible too, where, you've got those one hit wonders in the Bible. They just show up, bam, they do something, and then you never hear from them again. It's okay if I'm a one hit wonder. Just use me, Lord. And if it's only one time, I will revel in that. And I'll say thank you for using me.
So we've covered a lot of great information. What do we do with all of it now? How do we move forward?
I think the church has a responsibility to love everyone. We have the responsibility to bring people into the fold, and they're allowed to come as they are. God put no preconditions whatsoever on us coming to him. He didn't say, "Melody, get rid of all your sin and then I will accept you," because that's impossible. I can't even get up in the morning without his grace and his mercy. I can't even do that. I don't even breathe without him, okay? For us to accept that, I think that's how we move forward. Those of us who understand God, those of us who have been healed by God from mental health conditions, or that we're in the process of being healed by him, we have a responsibility to bring other people in the same way by explaining to them how God did it for us so that they can see it with their own eyes like, wow, okay, oh, that's how he does it. So it's not some miraculous sprinkling healing dust on you, that I'm going to wake up tomorrow and I'm this happy-go-lucky, carefree, worry-free person. Miracles do happen, but for the most part, he's put us on this earth because this is the job that we have and this is the job that we need to be taking very, very seriously. Nobody has to make any kind of deal for me to accept them as who they are and start loving them right where they are. So they don't owe me anything and they don't owe God anything.
When you said that, it just brought to mind that scripture in Revelation that says they overcame by the blood of the Lamb and the word of their testimony. That's how we heal. That's how we win. And sharing it. I love that you're advocating for us to share that. How did you overcome? How did you, whatever? Good. And I think the only thing I would add to that is I would just encourage all of us. I remember in my 20s when I realized not everybody's life journey was about trying to get healed and whole. And it blew my mind. And it was so devastating that it's like, I'm over here working so hard. Why aren't you? So I would just encourage everyone to make that a part of who you are. Like you said at the beginning about being curious. Why do I do this? Why do I get mad at this? Why am I upset about X, Y, or Z? Get curious in your own life and take responsibility for, well, I might need to talk to somebody about that. I might need to get a friend who I can trust to go, hey, I do these things. Help me out here. What do I do? How can I use this and turn this around for the good? So I think that would be my practical.
Indeed, Mia. Are we also using popular science to define healing and wellness? What is it? Whatever state I'm in, there I am content. Cast all your cares upon him. And he's already said he will take them on. So it's okay to yell at God. It's okay. Let's tell people that. Tell God why you're mad at him. He can take it. He's a big boy. Let's not let popular science also tell us how to define healing and wellness either. And let's find that in the scriptures as well.
I love that. So I guess my practical is kind of a little bit of what both of you are saying and the experiences, because I've had those on both sides. So you mentioned earlier about we as a church have to be mindful that we're not re-traumatizing people. And I've had people in my family experience, you just need to pray more, and that's all going to go away. And so I'm so thankful for what you said, Melody. God absolutely has the power. And sometimes we hear those stories about people who were miraculously healed from whatever ailment it is. And that's beautiful. But most of us don't get that miraculous moment healing. And it is that process. What do they say? I've been sanctified. I'm being sanctified. I will be sanctified. It's a process for all of us. So I think for me, practically, it just means you guys were talking about being mindful of where someone else is, only temporary, because God, he can and will work in that situation. And so just being mindful of what does or doesn't work for me may not work for them, but to just be willing to be with them where they are, continue to point them back to the creator, the one who does have a power to get us through it one way or the other, whether it's one moment at a time or if it's in a moment.
That's so good, Andrea. I think about that scene in The Chosen when little James wants his healing and Jesus said, not yet. And, I think about prayers I've been praying for years for certain people and accepting maybe this is part of the story is the waiting and the not happening suddenly, even though that's what I want. I want my microwave instant right now.
And let us not forget that part of our job is our own faith as part of the process for other people. And if you'll remember, the guy at the healing, it was his friend's faith that actually healed him. It wasn't him. It was the faith of his friends to pick him up, and that's what healed him. And so let's not forget the power that we have to help a person get into a closer touch with recovery and healing and start them on their own path.
Well, ladies, I love talking any opportunity I have to speak to both of you individually, but together it just makes my day. So I'm so glad our audience could join us for that. Thank you for joining us, everyone. We'd love to hear your thoughts on God versus pop psychology. So drop us a line in the comments for a larger conversation on social media. Our links are in the show notes below. And remember, stay curious
and keep seeking.
Thank you so much for joining us today. Also Called provides a space for honest conversations about the truth of who God is, who we are, and the relationships He wants us to have with Him, each other, the church, and ourselves. This episode was just the start of the conversation. Be sure to check the show notes for extra resources to go further. You can also find our social media sites to join the discussion. Don't miss our next chat by subscribing to our YouTube channel or wherever you listen to podcasts.
Also Called is part of Bible and Pop Culture, a crowd-funded nonprofit that allows us to provide our content to start great conversations for free. You can help us keep doing this by checking out BibleandPopCulture.com or AlsoCalled.org's Donate Subscribe buttons with a one-time gift, supporting us monthly, or sharing us with someone who might like the conversation. Thank you for being a part, and see you next conversation.